Hey y'all, this is MMA Toad. I'm gonna give you a fight recap of Vegas UFC 105. Very hit and miss card. Happy it was at the Apex. A card like that would have been fucking ferocious in front of a live audience. Despite I don't think any of these fighters should be fighting in front of Dana White's Cool Kids Club, little tiny ass Apex. If you have the Apex booing and screaming, including a soccer mom, like break that shit up between some stalls, then you know the fights are going bad. But I'm going to go through the entire card starting from the early prelims. Vanessa Dunopoulos taking on Talita Alan Carr just curled her up into a ball. I have notes on every one of these fights. Just quick notes to myself from live reactions. My notes here is that Vanessa was curled into a ball. Um, Alan Carr farted in her face the majority of this fight, just literally had her ass on her face. Um, but women's MMA never ends within the distance because they don't train throwing elbows. It's the only time a ref will ever kind of lunge in, step in, get a little curious of what's going on. Women hammer fists just don't do enough damage. There's not enough blood. There's not enough ooh, ow, what's going on? Let's stop this fight. So I took this fight as over 2.5 rounds as a booster to my distance parlay we'll get into here as a first leg. But yeah, I think a lot of people expected more from Vanessa. She's fought better opposition. Quite frankly, Alan Carr came out, looked fucking juiced up, just curled her into a ball, slammed her on the ground, controlled her on the ground. Easy, unanimous win. Next fight on the card, we got Boudet taking on old, of course, update the graphic here. Taking on Iran Satibalvadev. I'm never going to say this guy's name correctly. I just call him Sadi the entire fight. When Kennedy pulled out of the fight, I switched my pick to Martin. I think he is the human blob that we grew up watching in X-Men. He's got that big bread basket, has to cut to make the 265. That being said, Iran was landing some powerful combinations, missing some getting blocked, some getting through. Not quite enough at 265, but I think at light heavyweight, the guy could do okay, honestly, from watching this fight. He's got to work on his grappling defense, but given a full camp and everything else, you have to keep that in consideration as well. He could look a lot better. So I thought he looked alive for a knockout. I think Boudet is still very likely to get cracked and dropped. He's a fairly clumsy fighter. He leans on standing clinch control to win a majority of his fights by decision. Rounds 2 and 3, Boudet won on damage and volume. He also was turning into fucking Kamar Usman, hitting some big toe stomps, and you got to remember too, he's got like 50 pounds advantage over Sadi. So those toe stomps were absolutely crushing the shit out of my boy's feet. Um, again, he weighed in at like 230, 220. He wasn't going to have much of a physical chance just to get out of these scramble situations that Boudet likes to just clinch up and play it safe. So we get that one right. Next on the card, took Victor Henry, unanimous decision. I called Henry by points. He's good. He's good enough to mix it well enough where he's able to, again, get out of scramble situations. He's circling off. His footwork's not the worst thing. He's constantly kind of hitting different angles and pumping his jab out. He kind of reminds me with his hair all slicked back and shit, just like a Asmund Silver. He's kind of got that Asmongold's little cousin look to him in his face. I don't know, it's funny as shit, but got a little bit of a pumpkin head. He looks like he can crack, eat a good amount of shots. I don't think he's ever been finished by knockout. So, but he's good on the ground. He gets in some bad positions, is able to post up, break away, get the underhooks. So gets this one done. Wasn't too surprised. The overall volume right there, you can see 139 out of 227 strikes, 2 for 3 on his takedown attempts. And that's the thing I have to mention about Pedro is he just the fight wasn't going his way. It was easily going to be a unanimous decision, and this guy was just attempting takedown after takedown after takedown, just lunging with his head down, getting more and more tired. It's like, bro, it's not going to work for you. Change up the game plan. Not sure what that was about. Moving up the card, we got Loma Luke Boom taking on Estela Nunes. Now, I have to mention, the prop on this fight was absolutely fucking nuts. -1,000 prop for Loma against Estela Nunes, who was very live in this fight. I saw somebody, they were going to start a test by taking all the underdogs and throughout all the fight cards, at least for a little bit, and conduct like a test on this, because the dogs have been showing up throughout the year. The O's have been going. So why not, right? This was one of the biggest mismatch on odds, and ended up being a very close fight. Estela able to get Loma to the ground. Not too surprising there. Loma's fast early on with her kicks, throwing them mostly high. She loves going for the head kick. And you can see here she did throw in total 7 of 10 leg kicks. But that's where Nunes shined the most in her grappling and total strikes overall. Loma wins the fight slightly, sure. The thing that Nunes lacked is, despite she had some success with her grappling, some success there, she just didn't have good output. She didn't do enough volume, and that's why she loses. Holy shit, the pre-fight prop is even higher on this graphic. It's $11.50 for some sport books. But anyways, Loma, she's decent. Not amazing, but she's decent. I just think people had a little too much high stock in her. Perhaps this next fight of hers, depending the opponent, if she's favored like that, which I don't expect her to be after this performance, I might just go the other direction and try to bank out on that. Moving up the card, actually a fairly fun fight. This one deserved a crowd, unfortunately for them. Reyes McKee took on Daniel Franza. Franza not gonna win the length department, the striking department in terms of at range. He had a void to cross, a very dangerous void. And I know McKee's had a tough go out in his time at UFC, but he's been in some really, spicy exchanges where he's cracking or getting cracked. He's just kind of one of those kill or be killed fighters. And with a name like Skeletor, yeah, the guy is just kind of reachy, kind of lengthy. Skin and bones. And he was firing a beautifully left place jab that was just kept finding the home on the right cheek of Daniel, busting that face up, causing some aggravation. But Daniel would sit there and exchange back. So he would also like eat 2 to give 1 because of that range, that reach disadvantage that he had, and would actually look pretty solid. And towards the end of the round, he was starting to come back with a couple flurries of his own, but the damage was accumulated. McKee had some huge knockdowns in this fight. Absolutely. I think it was 3 knockdowns or 4 knockdowns in the first round. It was absolutely fucking wild. But gets back to the corner, and his coaches were like, what do you want to do? You want to keep going? I mean, my boy's lip is just fucking gushed open. And the moment I could see that, I said, oh, fuck, they're gonna stop the fight. The fact that the coaches were just like, you want to keep going? What do you want to do? At least they kind of sensed that, hey, the fight could be over right here. We shouldn't keep taking damage. But no, that lip was busted bad. So, Dr. Stoppage, not too surprised. I had this fight ending by knockout, and that's also part of my parlay in fights not going the distance. Was guaranteed to get this one by a technical stoppage or Dr. Stoppage knockout. So we hammered that exactly as we'd planned. But again, good for McKee. He needed that one. Another loss there could have been the end of his road at UFC. Moving up the card, and speaking of which, Diana Belbita took on Dione Barbosa. Barbosa, much heavily favored here, but actually delivered to the -1,000 prop. Everyone had Barbosa by a round 1 submission, knowing that Belbita has been submitted more times than not. She's had like 4, now 5 losses or so. 2 a submission, one of those coming from Molly McCann in the first round. Barbosa is huge. Diana was coming up in weight in addition to this. And honestly, on the feet, I thought Diana was live in the fight. She was throwing with good power. She knew that she had to hit a big shot. She kept her head down. She would come out these little flurries. She gave it all on her feet, and Barbosa doesn't look like a -1,000 prop there. But I said the moment they get into some type of scramble, some type of clinch exchange, I just expect Barbosa to rip her to the ground and make quick work of it. And that's exactly how it happened. The fight was very hit and miss for the first 3 minutes. Barbosa slams Diana to the ground, starts working off, circling off, putting all that pressure down on the throat, gets the tap. I had Barbosa by round one submission, in addition to single method submission, in addition to distant parlay, distance no. So a lot of stakes on that one, but it was the fight that I was most comfortable with the stylistic matchup and size advantage. So we were happy to get that one. All right. Oh yeah. And depending, how much you like to throw out in the community, just know that in women's MMA, there's some of us that are big enough degens to throw 10 bands at that shit and watch that just turn into 30. So that was a solid bet. That was a huge hit for women's MMA. Congrats to Maddie Betts. All right, moving up the card. Ooh. Torres Finney took on Robert Valentin. This was a terrible fucking fight. This was not fun to watch. I was hoping that Torres would be happy with his positioning and be able to release, give up some of the pressure of going for some of these double legs or these single leg attempts and just kind of hammering some shots or trying to slide up better to prevent Valentin, because he would get several takedowns throughout this fight, pick him up over his shoulder, switch, throw, kind of have like a side control almost. But Valentin was able to, due to his size and just physical advantage as well, be able to just get back up to his feet a majority of these times. Finney just wasn't able to move up, wasn't going to flatten him out, put hooks in, wasn't trying to really do much from, a technical standpoint other than maintaining that pressure, keeping Valentin pinned down as much as possible. You can see here in the total fight that total strikes thrown, 17 hit a 35, whereas to Valentin, he hits 93 of 126. He's hitting elbows off the back. He's peppering shots to the side of the head, elbows off the side of the head. Torres cut up across the top. Now, Valentin, of course, being warned, like, all right, hey, be careful, no shots to the back of the head, but really didn't have much to work with here. Didn't have an exciting fight. Either guy, is upset with this fight, I know. But just expected more from Finney. He was confident he was going to come out and smash his opponent, and said that, it was a dud performance, is his words verbatim. It certainly was, and I know it doesn't add to the fact that Dana was very skeptical of Finney in the Contender Series and the contract. So not the kind of performance you want, right? Not the big debut performance you want in the octagon, but as long as he actually implements some striking and can find a way to advance positions to always hunt for a finish, like get better jiu-jitsu, do better things on the ground to hunt for the submission, then I could see a bounce back over time. But this is going to put a large amount of the fan base against him. I'm seeing articles of people screaming to cut him, screaming this and that. Again, tough go at the office. He remains undefeated. I'm happy that he wasn't super cocky and arrogant, at the end of the fight saying, I don't know what you're all talking about. I mean, that was domination, you know what I mean? He's owned up to it. He's accepted it. I'm sure his team can go back and make some changes. At the end of the day, he won a wrestling match, not an MMA fight, in my personal opinion. So I understand why Tony Weeks threw out the scorecard that he did. I know that Danny out of, was it Bellator, the old Penn State wrestling captain? He lost. He lost a fight because he showed up and just did not strike, but had dominant control time for nearly all 15 minutes. I think that was actually a 5-round fight, so it may have been even 25 minutes. But yeah, he won a wrestling match and not an MMA fight, and actually the judges gave the scorecard to his opponent. So he's got to be careful of this. Hopefully it's a learning lesson for him. We got to have striking. We got to have submission attempts, or it's just not going to go well in the future. Especially if you climb the middleweight division, these guys can do better cage work and defend the takedown. Oof, it's going to be a really tough go. I think we're going to see that Curtis Blades Almeida knockout where he's just attempting that double leg, and eating shots off the side of the head that he doesn't recover from. All right, moving up the card. Really happy with Ode's performance here. I took him as the underdog in this fight. I know a lot of people expected Gurulu to just show up and do his thing, but Ode, when he's at range, he throws solid kicks. He's got good speed, and surprisingly, it was the hands that really peppered in and did their thing. He did work off bottom position here in this fight. It did look pretty bad for him for a moment, but yeah, no, I like the kicks from Ode Osborne. He does have a nice, wiry, snappy frame, fast. Is he going to accelerate and go super far in the division? I don't think so. Flyweight is extremely competitive and stacked and full of prospect and young up-and-comers, but you know, at the end of the day, this was a pretty okay fight for him. He needed this one. I know Ode, you know, he's likable from some of the media things he does. He's shown interest into the trading card community, so that's always going to win you some fans. And yeah, he just seems like a really nice guy. I got a chance of briefly meeting him and Marab at UFC 300 at a meet and greet. And yeah, I got nothing against the guy. I only wish him the best. But I do know from a winning standpoint, his back and forths have been very hit and miss, and so he absolutely needed this one as well. So congrats to him. Let's see, any notes on this? Yeah, just worried about the ground game. Seems to be the weakest point in his game. Yeah. Not really going off these notes. I'm just kind of jib-jabbing based on my recollection. Brad Tavora is taking on GM3 Gerald Meerschaert. You know, it's hard to count Meerschaert out of a fight. He's proven to be one of the most successful underdogs from a betting perspective, especially. Just take the submission more times than not. Meerschaert had a very tough time out against Brad. It was kind of precautioned that Tavares, he's got amazing takedown defense. Not too many people can ever really get it off on him. And even if he did, he's going to be very difficult to work with and maintain on the ground. Brad very powerfully, you know, I saw a couple people expecting maybe Brad had a knockout with that power on the feet and being able to keep the fight there. He certainly had moments where he was just snapping Gerald's head back consistently. Solid right hands, quick little 1-2s. He kept it very technical. He wasn't getting ruthless. He wasn't getting sloppy. And I think a lot of that too, coming back after such a hiatus, is being able to keep that cardio, because again, GM3 is live in the fight. Going into the second, third round especially is when he starts to be able to generally have enough wear on his opponents to have that physicality battle won from a stamina perspective that never got to be implemented for GM3 in this fight, which is why we saw Brad from pillar to post take this fight to a unanimous decision. GM3 was not able to tire out and wear out and threaten submissions whatsoever in this fight. The control time, he had moments, sure. He had 4 minutes and 44 seconds of control time, but he was 0 for 8 on his takedowns, right? So Meerschaert, when he's able to connect, he can do some things. He can set up these opportunities. But yeah, I think this was just stylistically, physically a tough matchup for him. A guy that can kind of put away his bread and butter, that's got him to be around as long as he has in the division. Honestly, a lot of these strikers at middleweight, they're not as well rounded, a lot of them, and they absolutely get taken to the ground. And GM3 is able to survive until you get to that top level. Of course, these guys are a little better at that, but yeah, good for Brad coming back, and I'm sure we'll see both men around the next go. All right, Romeus, so Cortavius Romeus taking on Kangho Lee. I remember looking at Romeus and his Tapology and just different articles and pictures I'd seen, his weigh-in. I'm looking at all that scar tissue around the eyebrows of Romeus, thinking, I don't know if it's going to happen from Lee, but man, is he going to have a tough go when somebody starts hitting him to the brow with some good vicious strikes. I thought a lot of Lee would be peppering to the body and just kind of control out to a decision. I stayed away from this one from a distance standpoint. I should mention at this point in the card, I'm 4 out of 6 on my distance going into the final 2 fights, and pretty much hammering most of my methods as well. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty Gucci, but I stay away from this fight because I respected what Romeus may be able to do with his jiu-jitsu, but Lee is Korean Khabib. He absolutely comes out constantly 1 foot on the gas and just peppering shots, working for the takedown, dominant control, constantly raining shots. His coaches did a number for the Apex, especially for such a quiet, small little facility. They're screaming. It sounded like a fucking cutscene from Ippo Hajime where they have the drums and the whole crowd just sitting there screaming and chanting for their fighter. Lee, every time he had these shots being rained down, it was causing a lot of sensation. The refs like edging in. There were just some hammer fists, and eventually they started getting through successfully and just kind of cracking Romeus, who didn't have both hands to guard, protect. Lee doing a job of holding one of these hands as he's hammering down other shots. So gets the ground and pound TKO round 2. But very dominant performance for him. Looked very good. Total strikes, 116 out of 179. And the control time at 5 minutes, 38 seconds with 2 takedowns in this fight out of 4. The thing that has to be mentioned for Romeus is he was doing great in a lot of these scrambles until he wasn't. It's like terrible positioning IQ. He would have the hooks in but would be too high. Lee would post up, shimmy around. Let's see what other notes I had on this. Yeah, that's really it. Just the positioning for Romeus. He would have dominant position and just give it up. So something that I'm sure can be improved, but tough go out for him. Congrats to Lee. Improves his record to 11-1. All right, moving up to your co-main event. Not gonna lie, this fight didn't quite go the way a lot of us expected it to. This is personally where my distant parlay fell off for the week. Expecting distance was a no. This would not go to the judges. I figured it was going to go one of 2 ways. Pat Sabatini was either going to get the submission, or more preferably and favorably of what I expected is Joe Anderson Brito was going to get the knockout, in a very early knockout, kind of like what we saw Diego Lopez do with Sabatini, just absolutely crack and drop him. Didn't go that way. Brito had some power, but threw very little shots because he couldn't defend the takedown. So if you look at the control time, you got to think, this is a 15-minute fight, right? Pat Sabatini, 4 for 5 takedowns, 13 minutes and 47 seconds of control time. So again, Brito, what is he threatening? He's threatening fluke choke. I mean, he just had nothing going for him in this fight. He was gassing out his arms for no reason. Sabatini very live and comfortable in these exchanges on the ground. Knows what he's doing. But the frustrating thing for Sabatini, he did not want to advance his 3-quarter mount position. He just wanted to sit back, play it safe, pepper shots to the body, keep busy. He's not dumb. He certainly keeps busy enough where they're not standing this fight up. Which, to mention again, Beltran broke up that Finney fight 3 times in the 3rd round alone, I'm pretty sure. Just due to the inactivity. And you could literally hear a soccer mom in a crowd break that shit up, like screaming, because the fight was so fucking awful. So Uh, I almost wish that fight was in front of a live audience so you could truly hear like a large crowd screaming and roaring and getting really upset. Then his star power would have really taken a big shitter, especially on like a pay-per-view or something where more people tuning in and paying for would have been really upset. But to cycle back to Sabatini is, he's 135 out of 158 strikes. Well, it's because these shots can't miss. They're little small little peppering, non-damage, non-lethal shots, and he wasn't really advancing from that three-quarter mount to go for the submission. So, I know he won the fight, and he's gonna be in a really good mood, happy, cheering. Yeah, he gets to continue, helps secure his position with the UFC, perhaps. But it wasn't a fascinating, exciting fight, and I think fans are upset on both sides of this. We expect Sabatini, especially when Dana's in his war room giving a breakdown. If you didn't know, now you know. Well, I didn't know that Sabatini was so afraid to finish a fight. I didn't know that. I mean, his record shows otherwise. He's certainly capable of hitting some submissions, but just wasn't interested in this fight. I don't know if it was the fact that he was respecting Brito's capabilities with the elbows and just trying to slide up and have Brito go full guard and just kind of come back in the fight in any kind of way, or hit one of these Kimuras or something that he was attempting for, but just not a super interesting fight. A lot of people got absolutely derailed on this one. Everyone expected Brito by a knockout there, so, or Brito, I should say. Oh, Brito. All right. Moving up to your main card, another tough fight, another upsetting fight. Let's go through the numbers here, shall we? Lerone Murphy, 87 out of 195 strikes to Emmett's 45 out of 157. It's going to have Lerone at 68 significant strikes. I can argue that. Whereas to Emmett hit 44 out of his 156. Which almost every strike of his is significant. But when you break down where the damage was being applied in the volume, what really won this fight for Lerone was the kicks. He was running. He was throwing out the elbow. Anything that Emmett was trying to cross and do in that void, because, again, Murphy is running. Just like his big bro, Leon Edwards. These technical UK strikers, I don't know what it is, and they're fucking... their strategy, their training, their coaches, maybe even their DNA, that they love to run. They love to avoid a big car crash, right? And so he continues to do this in some of his fights where he senses that he's not winning those exchanges. I think he learned a little bit from Dan Ige, like, hey, if Ige can drop me like this, then the power of Emmett could really put me out. He respected the power of Emmett. There's no doubt about it. But I also have to throw in there the amount of fucking glazing that was going on from the commentary team to a guy who's constantly running away and putting back these, like, majority of time non-super fatal damaging shots, just little whatevers, is absolutely crazy. Some of those leg kicks were finding a great home. At one point, Murphy had a spinning back kick that ripped really hard to Emmett, and Emmett was able to keep his poker face, but we all could hear the smack and knew it did some damage. So good on him for being able to continue to find ways to cross the void, but it was just so hard for him to cut that angle or find a way to keep Murphy from getting away every time. He would have brief moments, especially later in this fight. I think it was like fourth round or so. Started getting through with some of these right hands. Had Murphy backed up against the cage very briefly where he's not running now. Would start to pepper to the body. Early in the fight especially, I liked the body head from Emmett when he was able to connect a little bit more flush. But it seemed like after the first round or two, the strategy was very clear from Murphy. It's just, I'm going to continue to run away. Fucking Emmett pointing down at the ground, taunting the runaway on Murphy throughout the fight. At the end was kind of what a lot of us saw and thought. And again, the commentary glazing. My favorite moment in the fight is Michael Bisping. Lerone Murphy's takedown defense is absolutely, and you just see fucking Emmett pick up Murphy, throw him over his shoulder, and have more hang time than a fucking paper airplane flying through a room. Like it felt like he was in the air for 3 or 4 seconds easy. Wasn't able to really follow up with this. He had 4 out of 11 takedown attempts. I was surprised we weren't seeing any of the grappling exchanges from Murphy to avoid the gunfights and just keep Emmett's sharpest tools, at bay by not being able to load up that overhand. But why do that when you can do the next thing better, and that's just to run away and avoid the fight? So I get it. I'm not going to sit here and die on this hill like, oh, Emmett was robbed, like I'm seeing, but Emmett was robbed of a fight. I mean, from a technicality standpoint, and you include the kicks, sure, Murphy wins on points, but did Emmett win the fight? Murphy wins on points. Did Emmett win the fight? No. But did he come to fight? Yes. Did Murphy come to fight? No. He came to play this little game of strategic, I'm running away chess. Granted, again, he had great elbow strikes. He had great kicks that kept him very live in this fight and kept Emmett at bay. But I don't know. This running away from your opponent thing, almost to a degree. I don't know how to really say it. It's not gonna win you fans. I don't think we can take fighters points away for this kind of shit. The judges still have to look at overall strikes landed, but man, you can continue to win. You can continue to keep your easy work. Fucking taunt to the crowd that's booing him at the end. It's not going to win you fans. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get those big fights. We got a very exciting featherweight division right now. Some contenders in the works. Congrats, you kept your O. You also remain a 0 because you did nothing impressive in that fight to show us that you're ready. I saw somebody saying, give him the winner of Mitchell and Silva. He'd be lucky to get the loser if I was a matchmaker. I would say that, he still needs a lower ranked opponent still. Maybe fight back in rankings, not forward after a performance like that one. Maybe hunt for a finish and show that you're game and live for a fight before you get treated to such. Anyways, that's going to be my breakdown. UFC Vegas 105, very exciting week for y'all. Coming up, UFC 314. Y'all don't even know. I'm going to have a lot going on, from training cards to predictions, and also something that I'm throwing out there as just a fun, if option A occurs, then X occurs, or if option B occurs, then Y occurs. Like, it's going to be a fun little... you're going to see something exciting from a content standpoint for me on this one. I think you guys are going to get some laughs out of it as well. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys hanging out. As always, much love. Like, comment, subscribe. If you want to be engaged in more consistent action, hop over to the IG. That's where we're sharing stories out or doing more with trading card and just various content things. But always looking to do the live companions whenever possible. There's going to be certain events that maybe I'm in public, at a fight, like somewhere watching the fights, or more importantly at like my brother's or something, watching the fights with friends. But if I'm home to myself watching the fights, I think the fight companion's a lot of fun. So if you've been tuning into the live videos of that, much appreciated. I always like looking over during the fights and hearing the chat perspective of who won what or who's doing what with bets. It's always fun to go back and forth and share the experience nonetheless. So 314. I may very well be doing something for this fight. I'm gonna figure out those details here in the next couple days. I got a couple offers on the table of places that would show the fights for me, and I could bring some people through. But it may very well just be me here in the studio doing my thing again. So much love, y'all. Thanks for coming through. We'll catch you next time. Peace.